think most people can't even appreciate it in the moment because it's so rare, it's almost unprecedented that a band can continue with different members under different names and actually create high-level music that's vital to the culture at this moment.
Welcome to episode 96 of the Hipsters United podcast. My name is Chris, and joining me this week are Alex.
Hello.
And special guest Doug.
Hello.
We had another special guest scheduled who hasn't made it online yet, so if he joins us in the middle, I will try and smoothly integrate him into the show, which would be a Hipsters United podcast first. But we can go ahead and get going without him. All three of us attended shows on the U.S. leg of the Oceania tour last week. I saw the band in St. Louis, and Alex and Doug saw them in Chicago. In addition, Doug purchased the VIP package and attended the pre-show, concert, and VIP session. So let's start out just with some general impressions of the shows, and then we'll get into the VIP stuff. Alex, do you want to go first with what you thought about the whole thing? What you thought about starting with Oceania straight through the Orb? Any other amusing anecdotes you have about the Chicago experience?
The Orb is awesome. I think everyone agrees. I was really pleasantly surprised. I mean, when I heard that they were playing the entirety of Oceania, I thought, oh man, I don't know if people have the patience for that. And we've seen in previous years people, Billy would complain about the response to Zeitgeist, and I think Chris on a previous podcast we talked about I was skeptical of how this was going to go. But whatever the reaction's been to Oceania, which I guess is mostly positive, I think the response from the crowd to the playing of the album was pretty much entirely positive. I mean, I didn't see anyone grumbling or looking around. We'd have to talk to someone who sat in the back or was maybe less into it than the people who were close up as I was. But it seemed to me like everyone was grooving to it, and it didn't seem like everyone knew it super well. And even the people who just seemed like they were there, I don't know what that je ne sais quoi is about the people who look like maybe they're just casual fans. But even they seemed really into it, and I think that's just because it sounds great. Since the band's always been great live, but I mean, I think especially since 2010, it seemed to me that they just sound fabulous, and this album is pretty good, and it's accessible, I think, and people seemed really into it, which is great. And then the classics, as Billy said, were rocking, and I think that I have no criticisms. I thought the David Bowie number, I was surprised that that's still happening. And I wouldn't mind seeing that retired, but I don't really have any criticism. The only thing is that I think my opinion about Oceania is that the second half is a little slow. I think the first half is better than the second half. Of course, that's true of almost every album ever written. But I felt myself getting a little antsy during the second half, and was like, oh, come on, let's get to some of the other stuff. But that was a pretty minor feeling, and so. That's impressive that they can pull off playing a whole album that isn't something that people know from the radio, and have such a positive response, unless Doug disagrees.
I felt pretty similar. The Orb is awesome. It is.
So let me ask you guys about the Orb. Now that both of you thought it was awesome, I did too. So did my fiance who went with me, who is definitely more of a casual fan. Did they use the Orb during the second half of the show for you guys? Because for us in St. Louis, they used the Orb for Oceania, and then only, I believe, for Tonight and Tonight Reprise. I don't believe they used it for any of the other songs in the second half of the show.
Definitely for Tonight and Tonight Reprise. I thought maybe during Space Odyssey or Space Oddity, but I think they just kind of went to their purple and pink lights and, regular stage lights at that moment.
Okay, I wasn't sure because when I had talked to Simon when he saw the band in Australia this past summer, he was talking about, he made it seem like that they were using the Orb throughout the entire show and was even talking about Orb, like graphic programming that they had for songs that they weren't playing yet. So I was... when I first saw that they shut it off for the second part, I thought maybe there was a problem with it or something like that. It's some sort of technical difficulty with the giant projector ball, but apparently not. So go ahead.
Let's see. I really liked Oceania in full. I thought that was, having seen them, a dozen times or however many it's been, having that experience of that album sort of presented to you the way you've been listening to it, at least the way I listen to albums, which is from the beginning to the end, that I thought was really cool. I actually was sort of waiting for the Chimera. It's probably my favorite song on the album, so I was getting a little antsy in the lead up to it. Beyond that, the hits, I didn't have any problem with that. I believe, Chris, you got Muzzle and we got Mayonnaise. I don't have a problem with that. We were about 80 feet from the stage on the hockey wall where the glass would go up, and about 4 orbs away is how I was kind of judging it. That extra foot up, we were able to see over the tops of everybody's heads, and I really enjoyed being in that sort of perspective as opposed to trying to fight for sight lines at, being only 5'7". But it was really cool. I mean, I enjoyed this show as much as any Metro show I've seen. I didn't go to the Riviera show last year in Chicago. I went to the Riverside Theater the night before in Milwaukee. That was a great night as well. I think I probably had more fun overall, though, just because of the VIP experience and all that, that entailed. But it was a great night.
So I guess you guys' setup was similar to ours, where there were the floor seats in the middle, and then the arena seats around it were also sold.
Yeah.
So some people were sitting in seats and some were standing on the floor.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Now, Chris, you said that the St. Louis, it was a little it was sparsely attended.
Yeah, and the floor was, I wouldn't say empty, but there was definitely tons of room on the floor. And I know that originally they had sold the seats in tiers, so the lower down seats were, I think they were the same price as the floor. And then there were upper level seats that they were selling for less. And what they ended up doing was anyone who bought an upper level seat, they just moved them down to the lower level for free, because they hadn't sold enough in the lower level seats. And I heard also that the local radio station 105.7 was selling tickets for $10.57. I think I heard. So they were definitely in competition with the St. Louis Cardinals, who had forget which game of the NLCS it was. Game 5, I think. It was one that before the Cardinals started their collapse. So.
Oh, gotcha.
$10.57 is how much the tickets were. That's less than the price of a beer at the Allstate Arena.
Yes, it is. I can attest to that.
Yeah, but despite all that, Billy was in a markedly great mood. He did a lot more stage banter, crowd discussion than I was expecting. Last time I saw them in Columbus, not the almost acoustic Halloween show, but the regular show that they played in Columbus a couple of years ago, he said almost nothing. I believe he did make one reference to the Halloween show, and that was pretty much it. But this time, he was chatting about Albert Pujols and just having a great old time up there. They did a little guitar duel. He was in a great mood. He was very appreciative of the people who did come, making a reference to the fact that the Cardinals were playing at home, and he probably recognized that was competing with a lot of the same people that would have otherwise gone to the show. So it was definitely a different Billy than I was expecting to see. Plus, no crazy costume. He was just dressed like a regular person. I guess the spectacle was all channeled towards the orb and not into sun god headdresses or anything like that.
Nothing left over in the costume budget after that orb.
Yeah.
Well, he was pretty friendly in Chicago too. There wasn't a lot of stage banter other than this one extended rant would not be the right word, but monologue, I guess, for surely over 10 minutes during the hit part of the show. Besides that, almost nothing. I think he might have said 1 or 2 sentences during the Oceania part of the show. Doug?
Yeah, I think after Quasar, he said thanks for coming, and then they just kept playing pretty much.
So did they make any reference in your show to the fact that they were playing Oceania all the way through?
Yeah,
I believe after the 4th song that he actually came out and said, we're playing our newest album all the way through.
Yeah, it was right before Oceania, the title track, and he said, we're playing the whole thing through. This is the Oceania cruise. Thanks for, whatever, some sort of pleasantry like that, like maybe 4 sentences or something, and then this is the song called Oceania, and then they were off for the second half of the album. And
Yeah, you're right. He did the same thing in St. Louis. It was right before the title track, because I remember he said, and this is the title track, Oceania.
yeah.
Or however Billy pronounces it, Oceania.
Yeah,
Whatever.
So the one thing I didn't like, since it's more interesting when people have negative things to say, as I tweeted, I don't like when they pipe music into the amps without the band playing music. So this happens in like it happened in The Fellowship a couple years ago, and Disarm, as far as I could tell, was like that. And there were a few Oceania tracks like that. And I know a lot of bands do this, but to me, the fun of seeing a band play is seeing a band play, not seeing a band play over recorded music. It's like why Jimmy Chamberlain's. No, that's not true. I was about to say it's why Jimmy Chamberlain's better than a drum machine, but there's a lot of reasons why Jimmy. But I'm curious if you guys feel the same way, or if it doesn't bother you.
I feel the same way, and I remember thinking the same thing. My fiance turned to me at one point and asked, who was playing a part, because it was a keyboard track or something, and they had 3 keyboards up on stage, and the band wasn't doing anything at the time. There was at least one member of the band who was just standing there, and I don't know why they didn't play that part. Maybe there was no way to transition from that part into what they were going to next or something like that. I'm not sure, but yeah, that bothers me also, and I'm not sure why they went in that direction. I'm sure there's probably some reason for it, but it was
Seems like a weird artistic choice to me.
Yeah.
It doesn't bother me, and the reason why it doesn't bother me is because I think if that stuff wasn't there, we'd miss it. If you didn't have the orchestra parts in Tonight being piped in, it would just be a different experience. So I kind of enjoy it. I mean, it doesn't bother me. I know they're cheating, so to speak, but I'm okay with it. I
guess I just feel, Tonight I was about to, for Disarm, I've heard versions of Disarm that I think are great that don't have the violins. And
yeah, I was gonna say this is different definitely than they've done in the past. Although I'm trying to remember when I actually saw them during the Melancholy tour, the last time I saw them in a big arena. I'm sure they had piped in strings and stuff for Tonight then also. It's hard to remember, but yeah, they've played Disarm electrically, like is on Euphoria. They've done it acoustically. They commonly would do songs like 33 or Disarm acoustically during the acoustic portion, and maybe because they aren't really doing that anymore, that's why they're bringing out the strings. It also could just be to appeal to the casual fans. I think Billy may figure, hey, the people who actually want to hear Disarm and are coming to hear that probably want to hear the version that's on the album.
Well, wasn't there a short period of time in 2010 where Billy was just singing karaoke to the backing track of Disarm?
Yep.
I never saw that happened live, but I heard about it. I almost feel like that's more honest to be upfront about it, as opposed to, it just feels a little sneaky to me when it's like, oh wait, is someone playing? I can't tell. I don't know.
Well, it's funny you bring that up though too, because I'm just sort of looking at the set list that we saw, and they pretty much stuck to the hits as we've heard them on albums, with the exception of speeding XYU up to stratospheric levels. But I again, it doesn't really bother me, but I think the songs were presented so well that I didn't even notice it until you guys brought it up.
Oh, funny, yeah. That's a good observation. They're one of the things that I think has long been fun about being a Pumpkins fan and listening to the live recordings has been the way that songs get played differently over and evolve over time. And that is an interesting observation that between Disarm, Tonight, Bullet, Zero, and Cherub Rock, there wasn't a lot. It wasn't like anything weird happened with any of those, and that's not a problem. I don't think. I think maybe especially after you've just played your entire new album, maybe the average fan is more interested in hearing the way they know it on the album, and that's a totally fine choice. But I hadn't noticed that until you mentioned it.
Well, and they still made room for the shoegazy weirdness. They had Space Oddity. There were some parts of XYU that were a little longer than the regular song. They redid a Song for a Son, which I wanted to see what you guys thought about that.
Well, that's probably my least favorite of the Tear Garden songs.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I'm kind of over it.
Wow.
Yeah, I know. So I'm probably not the best to ask that question. It's fine. It's kind of just a pumpkin song to me.
I don't want to get out of control and say it's one of the top 5 songs he's written since 2007 in my mind. But I wasn't wild about this version. I thought it seemed like at the Chicago show, I'd be interested in listening to a recording from one of the other shows on the tour, because it seemed like there were some technical difficulties at the end of the song or something. Did you notice that at all, Doug? Like, it seemed like he was trying to do something that didn't work, or Jeff didn't do something right, and he just kind of called it quits and the song ended early.
Yeah, I think some people even on the O board were mentioning that they thought that he was having amp problems. I definitely heard his amp cut out. There was one time he was clearly playing a guitar solo, but there wasn't any guitar solo to be heard.
Okay.
So I think he was probably having issues. And someone else mentioned that a bunch of text ran behind his amp with flashlights. So clearly there was something going on there.
Okay, well, I withdraw my criticism then. I'm sure it was just the night as opposed to the new version. It sounded great for the most part, I thought.
I'm with you, though. They did not have technical problems as far as I know in St. Louis, and A Song for a Son is one of my favorite songs that they've done since they reformed, and I can't say I was a big fan of the new version either.
Interesting.
It was interesting. It was different, but in general, I don't like the long, drawn-out stuff that they do. When they do the 4 or 5 minute guitar noodling in the middle of the songs, and so to do that in a song that I really, really like kind of bothered me, as opposed to, if they do it during Glass and the Ghost Children, or a song that I don't really care for that much anyway, it's like, whatever. But
so you were not like a Set the Controls fan?
Oh, no, definitely not. And if you'll remember, I famously also don't like Gossamer, so...
Right.
See, that's just wrong.
Well, that's what's great about the band. There's something for everyone.
Yeah.
No, I will say this about A Song for a Son, though. When he played it, I did have the opportunity to go to the Tea House opening and see the second set, and their acoustic, and I really did enjoy that version.
Nice.
So, for what it's worth.
I'm very jealous. That whole 3-set Tea House thing seemed really, really cool.
Well, I think we got 5 or 6. So I was there when Greg Bates was playing the Today. It was a lot of fun. It was just to see him again. He was really engaging, and just like he was on stage a couple nights ago for both of us, or all of us.
Well, since we did talk about the crowd already, I guess we should skip to that and go off message here a little bit. Like we talked about, the St. Louis crowd was pretty sparse. I don't know how much of it was totally due to the baseball game and how much of it just was the St. Louis rock scene. This isn't really a place that the Pumpkins play all that often. I mean, Zwan played here a number of times, but the Pumpkins don't come here on every U.S. tour. It's not one of their popular stops. But I mean, I've also read on the O board that the crowds haven't been all that large at some of the other cities as well, and I mean, these have been larger venues than the Pumpkins have played recently, but they were also touring around an album that was backed by a label and got decent promotion on iTunes. And I mean, the album was fairly well received critically, from what I could tell. What do you guys think this means for future tours? Was this the last gasp of any reasonably large non-festival show for the Pumpkins? And if it is, do you care? I mean, do you lament the loss of the days of melancholy where the band looked like ants from the back of the Omni?
No, I don't lament those days. I think that they'll probably start playing more of those 1,000, 2,000 seat venues, maybe the 3,000 seat venues. They'll probably go back to that, if anything. I think the reason why they had to do this was obviously because of the orb. Cutting these venues in half and putting the stage on the half court line of these venues, and then closing off the 200 level because you're not selling it. I don't know. I mean, I suppose there's probably a lot of first time fans that are going. I definitely saw a lot of people my age and older bringing their kids. There was a lot of that in the seats. I think the tours are going to get smaller. Unless he's going to keep hauling the orb around with him.
Yeah, I just don't know nearly enough about the music industry or the touring business to really know. As far as what I want, though, I think the like Doug suggested, the 1,000, 1,200, whatever, 1,500 person venues, that's appropriate, I think, and that's what they've been doing as far as I've attended since 2008 or so.
Yeah.
And I think that's great. That's intimate and exciting, and there's so much history at places like the Metro and places in cities all across the country where I'm sure the Pumpkins played once upon a time, or Billy played with Swan, or they've already had some post 2007 show there, and places that have long storied histories, and those places are great. It's much cooler to see a show there than at a big arena. And what I don't know is if that's a sustainable model for them. I mean, Billy talked about the 2010 tour being really successful. I think that everyone in the band was really surprised by how successful it was. But if it's hard to make money doing that, then I don't know if they're frustrated that they really need to be at this arena level and they just can't quite pull it off. Or I'd be very, very curious to know what they think.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of why I was a little bit surprised at how, happy Billy seemed at the St. Louis show, because the crowd, just from being in it, it seemed really small.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it wasn't. I saw someone on the O board estimated 3,500 to 4,500 people. I didn't see that at all. I mean, I had no problem. We could have walked basically up to the front next to the stage if we wanted to be off to the side. It was very easy to get around on the floor, and the seats were, I mean, like I said, they had to move people down from the upper levels because they didn't sell all the lower level seats. So,
right. Well, that may have happened in Chicago too, although I think we must have had better attendance in Chicago because it seemed quite full, I thought.
Yeah, I think the floor was probably at about 75 or 80%, and I would say the same for the half ring of seats.
Yeah.
I will say, though, the people that went all seemed like they had a great time, and we were walking out, everyone said around us was all talking about how great it was, and there was a guy in front of us who was the epitome of the casual fan. I mean, he pretty much had no clue what was going on when they were playing Oceania all the way through. When they started playing Disarm, it was, I believe, the third song into the the hits portion of the show, and he turned to his friend next to him and said, "Oh, that must be it. This must be the end of the show." Just assuming that they played all those songs. He had never obviously been to a Pumpkin show, didn't realize they normally play for 2.5, 3 hours.
Yeah, that's great.
But I mean, he had a great time, and just when they kept playing after Disarm and kept playing all these hits that he knew, I mean, he was getting more and more and more stoked and crazy. And I mean, he couldn't have been older than 21 or 22 years old, so it wasn't like Disarm was his favorite song from his childhood or anything like that.
Yeah.
So
yeah, it's very cool to see some teenagers getting stoked to see old songs. I mean, my girlfriend thought she's a casual fan and she loved it. I mean, I thought, okay, thanks for coming to this, but she couldn't stop talking about it. She said she was going on YouTube the next day and listening to Pumpkin songs, and I think it really rekindled an interest in the band for her, which is, I mean, if that's at all representative of what the average fan reacts to the show, then that's great.
Well, my girlfriend's an average fan too. She really, she knows the old songs. She's heard them, but prior to Oceania, she really hadn't been exposed to it. So I've dragged her to a couple shows, and then the album comes out, so we're listening to it a lot. So having Oceania played in full, I think meant a lot to her because she knew everything. She knew what was going on. And then, of course, when they bust the hits out, she's having just as much fun as I was, or, anyone else that was near us.
I'm glad that all of us are in a relationship with a casual fan, so we can really have deep insight into...
we can observe them in their natural habitat.
Yeah.
I think the orb really helped, too, though. I mean, it's something unique to look at that you don't normally see at a rock concert, and I mean, it definitely makes it more like an art installation. And even if you weren't familiar with the Oceania songs, I mean, when's the turtle going to come back? There was always something going on up on the orb.
That's a very interesting point. I mean, I knew I said the orb was awesome. It was my first thing to say about the show, and I think everyone thought it was cool, but I hadn't actually thought about the fact that it might. Yeah, I think it does a lot to keep. It makes it seem more like you're seeing not like a theatrical performance, but as opposed to just a band playing music. There's something more like, did you say art installation a moment ago? I mean, there's something kind of cool about saying like, oh, they've clearly put a lot of thought into this. The music matches the images and something clear. Like it just feels like something that they're taking seriously, and it's visually captivating. And I bet that does a lot to keep people engaged with the music. That's an interesting point.
There's always something to look at. you know. And
Yeah.
I found myself looking at the orb quite a bit, you know. There was a lot of cool stuff on it, and it was very engaging. And the fact that it was sort of this, you know, 3D spherical thing that's just sort of floating above the band. There was, you know, you could look at Billy, you could look at the orb, you could look at Nicole, you could, you know, your eyes were bouncing all over the place, and it was very sort of engaging in that respect. Something that I don't think they've ever done before, at least not to that level.
Well, so I did not see the Melancholy tour, but Chris, you may remember. I remember reading about Billy, or reading or seeing an interview with Billy where he talked about. I guess they had big screens or something that were showing old movie footage or something during the Melancholy tour, and he said something like, "Well, you know, we're not really like a super interact with the crowd kind of band, so we need somebody to keep people engaged, and that's how we're doing it."
Yeah, I do remember that, and that's you can hear the if you go back and listen to those bootlegs, you know, when they play the Planet of the Apes clips and things like that between songs. I mean, that's the kind of stuff they were showing up on the screens.
Greatest circus and the greatest show of its kind in the world, or whatever.
World.
I've never seen that. I've only heard it. But yeah, I agree. Yeah, I think you're right, Doug. I mean, it's definitely. Oh, so I was gonna ask, was anything better than the Tonight Orb video?
You mean during the Oceania set or just?
Yeah.
Well, I thought that the Chimera, I thought it was really cool. Again, I bring that song up, but just the way that the sort of the speed of that song and what was happening on the orb, with just sort of these wavy wavelength colors, you know, bouncing across the screen. I thought that was really cool, and certainly Pale Horse was really neat as well. You know, it's hard to kind of remember all the images that you were seeing because there was just so much information, you know, being shown to us.
Yeah, the main theme seemed to be that turtle, and there were a lot of squid tentacles.
Yeah, hands, skulls.
Yeah,
very cool overall.
Yeah, the Chimera, one thing about that song was it seemed to definitely wake the crowd up a little bit because it was, you know, right after a few longer, slower songs. And the people who were starting to get restless, I think, that were unfamiliar with the album, I think that really, you know, drove them through the rest of that first set.
I think that's right.
Yeah, absolutely. And then Glissandra has sort of that movement to it too, just not as much, so it really helped push it along.
Yeah, and I really like Inkless. I think that song is, of all the songs on Oceania, the one that I've changed my mind about the most, that at first I didn't really care for, but now I really like. And it seemed to get a really great crowd reaction too, and I guess some of it could be just that it's the one that sounds the most like old-fashioned, typical Smashing Pumpkins.
Yeah, pretty much.
I think they just do a great job. I mean, it just sounds great, and the music is crystal clear, and the parts are distinguishable and melodic, and I think it just is really well done.
And they made the sound at the Allstate Arena pretty good because traditionally that venue is horrible. You know.
Yeah, I will say that the Chaffetz Arena where I saw it, the sound was pretty terrible, which is too bad because the band you could tell was really great. But you know, like when they were playing Wildflower, it was just like the vocals were totally drowned out by the keyboards and synthesizers, and just the echoiness of the stadium was really bad.
That's too bad.
Well, Doug, since you participated in the VIP experience, why don't you tell us a little bit about that? I mean, first of all, how many people were there? So, I mean, it was pretty expensive to go there and actually take part in the whole experience. I believe it was $400 per ticket to actually get to go and see the 3-song show and take part in the Q&A. So how many people were there with you?
I think there was probably 30. I've
Whoa.
seen other estimates that like 20, I think, in Winnipeg. I think there was probably 30 of us. We got an email, you know, just letting us know where to be and what time. And so everyone shows up. And at Allstate, they have a box office across the street from the arena. So we're all inside. And our host, William Smith, comes in and gives us all of our laminates and gets everyone settled and signed in. Asks us, you know, does anyone want to ask a question of the band? You know, come up and let me know. So he would write down basically the gist of your question, and then he ranked them. So I think maybe 6 to 7 people went up to offer to ask a question. So then they bring us across the street into the Allstate, and we're probably in like a 20 by 20 room. All the band's gear is set up. We just kind of walk in single file, and I found a spot on the floor, and their security guy comes in and says, don't move, no sudden movements, no flash photography. The band comes in and they go right into There It Goes. Then they played Plume, and then they played, it seemed to me, a slower down version of Stand Inside Your Love. It was probably 25% slower than the album version, and not as intense, just kind of a softer, sweeter version. So from there, the Q&A starts, and there was some really good questions. I think he was interactive and in a really good mood. Nicole spoke for a little bit. Mike spoke for a little bit. Jeff didn't say much of anything. And he was offering up some information, beyond the stuff that we've read in recent interviews. So that was pretty cool.
Did anyone ask anything particularly interesting? I mean, I saw you posted a video of the Q&A, but it was a little hard to hear the band sometimes. They didn't step up to the mic when they were talking.
Yeah, this guy, the last question, well, the second question was mine, and that was the most important one. But the last question, the third question, a guy had asked Billy, what changed? Why did you go from, the Tear Garden singles to Oceania? And the answer was pretty interesting. He basically just said that this works for us now, and I'm simplifying it. It is on YouTube, so you can watch it. But he really seemed like he was having fun and had wanted to be there, I guess is probably the best way to put it. So it was worth the money. I don't think I'll do it again, but maybe I will do it again.
Did everyone who was there seem like they had a good time and thought it was worth it? Did you talk to any other people that were there and part of that?
Yeah, I think that we all felt we got our money's worth. Having Billy 5 or 10 feet away from you, talking to you for 15 minutes is kind of a cool experience. So I think that, between that and having the band again that close to you playing these songs, I don't think any of us had any complaints from the people I talked to. I probably talked to about 10 of the people, because some of us all sat in the same row. So we were, discussing how much fun it was, how cool of an experience it was.
Yeah, I talked a couple of podcasts ago about how it's really interesting that Billy seems to, and I think it has something to do with going through the archive material and picking out, the B-sides and things for the deluxe reissue tracks and the albums. But he really is pulling out some of these random old songs a lot more frequently, and not necessarily playing them at shows. I mean, I don't know how well There It Goes would really work for a big crowd, or Bleed, but
right.
He is playing them at these little, like the Tea Shop and the Oceania Cruise and these VIP sessions, and it's a really neat thing. Like I'm glad there is a venue and a way for fans to hear some of these the deeper, older tracks, because I mean, otherwise they don't really fit into the big arena rock show. I mean, I guess if they ever did an acoustic tour, some of those songs could work on a all acoustic show, but I just think it's a really neat thing that he's doing.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, anyone who's going to spend that kind of money, I think is, has a long history with the band, and wants to see some of those or hear some of those obscured tracks, those older tracks that we probably never heard before live, or at least, in that particular setting. So it was really cool.
So how did it work once the show started? I mean, was there a special section you all sat in, or did they just let you down on the floor before everybody else?
Well, I think they were running a little bit late. So they hustled us over, or out of the room that we were in, and basically said, okay, here you go. And when, we looked down, I think the silver and the gold VIP members were already were already occupying the floor and some of the seats that they had. So the rest of the people went down, and then, we just kind of went to our seats at that point. And there was probably maybe 200 or 300 people at that point. So in addition to the 30 of us, and then they opened the doors. So once we were all in and we were in, our seats or on the floor, wherever we wanted to be, they opened the doors and everyone came in.
Very cool.
Yeah.
So we've had a couple of podcasts since details of the Melancholy reissue have emerged, and since I have a fresh batch of guests, once again, I think this is the third podcast in a row with all different people. Thought I'd get you guys' thoughts as well. Doug, what do you think about the deluxe edition's packaging, track list, price tag, all that stuff? Are you ready to give the band another $130?
They're a really expensive band to see the past couple of years. Yeah, I bought the Gish reissue and the Pisces and the Siamese Dream. I will probably buy Melancholy. I will buy Melancholy. That album was kind of it just is an interesting album for me because I thought it would have been better if it was 16 songs. So I'm really interested into digging into it, however many years, 16 years later or whatever it is. So I'm especially all the B-sides. I think there's 64 extra songs or something like that, and even the DVDs that they've released on the previous box sets have been really cool to kind of go back in time and see that history. So I'm looking forward to it.
I don't have much to add other than a guy that I follow on Twitter who I have never before or after seen tweet about the Smashing Pumpkins issued a series of tweets raving about this reissue project and how excited he was to revisit Melancholy and buy this thing and listen to all the new songs. And I thought, it's not every day that someone that you didn't have any idea was a Pumpkins fan goes on some rant about how much they're excited about buying something from the Smashing Pumpkins. It made me think that this might be a big. It's coming out pretty soon, I assume, right? I'm embarrassed that I don't know the date, but
I'm not sure if there is a date yet.
Do you assume before Christmas though?
I think it's sometime late November.
Yeah, so I bet it'll be a pretty decent Christmas seller, and I think that's good that the band can still generate interest in that way by and there's this movement back. People are interested in vinyl, especially now, and so that's cool.
I think it's December 4th it comes out.
Oh, here we go. Great.
It's cutting a little close. They're missing
the day after
Black Friday.
What are they doing? What are they doing?
Yeah.
Think of all those people at 5 a.m. Ugh.
So I'll ask you guys this, since it seems like I'm in the definite minority here, but a lot of the bonus tracks, the extra songs, really seem like they're instrumental rehearsal takes and things like that. And I was wondering what you guys thought of that. It seems like everyone on the O board is just stoked that there's any sort of extended version of Pistachio medley songs, and to me, I don't know, 2.5 minutes of jam guitar riff over and over again isn't really that much different than the 10 seconds on Pistachio medley, but
right.
I agree.
I would just like to hear songs that we've never heard before, and I don't know how many of those exist. I assume that there are some of those out there, but that's way more exciting to me than to hear 30 seconds of Jimmy doing paradiddles on his snare drum, or anything along those lines.
Or some of them that don't even have titles. Like there was one that was like Bagpipe Drone. Clearly that was just a, placeholder title. It's not even really a song.
It's Bagpipe Drone.
It's the holy grail of Pumpkins lost to the archive material.
Yeah, there's definitely enough stuff on there I am excited about. It's great to finally get a studio version of Speed. I'm really looking forward to that. But again, that's more because that's a fully formed song that, the band thought of enough to play at the Double Door show, so it clearly was at one point a possibility for inclusion on either Melancholy or one of the as a B-side to one of the singles. But I don't know, some of those, that's been my contention all along, is that a lot of these Pistachio medley songs weren't really songs. They were just stuff that the band messed around with in the studio. and then they smashed clips of them all together to make this pistachio medley. I'm sure some of them are full songs, and if there are others, I really wonder why those weren't included instead of 2.5 minutes of Helium instead of 10 seconds of Helium.
Yeah. That's good if you're like a real completist, and the idea that something exists you haven't heard drives you insane. But I agree with Doug. I'm more interested in more of a complete song than just some riffing or something.
Yeah. Well, thanks for joining us this week. If you have comments or feedback, please leave them in the post for this show on hipstersunited.com. And our closing song is that reworked A Song for a Son that we talked about from St. Louis, Missouri on October 18th, 2012. Good night, everybody.
This is a song for a son. This is a song for a sailor. The best I ever had. This is a song for a kid. This is a song for a tailor. You stitched up my own heart. You stitched up my own heart. And I this is a song for a blown-out bird. The car is on the town to the net. This is a song for a star. This is a song for a space invader who flew into the sun. Never to return. Never to return. song for a sailor. This is a song for a kid. This is a song for that tailor.
Hipsters United podcast is not affiliated with or endorsed by the Smashing Pumpkins, Virgin Records, or Warner Brothers Reprise Records. All opinions offered by panelists or guests of the Hipsters United podcast are their own and do not represent the opinions of the Smashing Pumpkins. All audio during the show is licensed for non-profit use per the terms and conditions on the Live Music Archive at archive.org. Intro music is from the Machina 2 album released for free download on the internet by the Smashing Pumpkins in September of 2000.